most people feel not speaking up is in itself a kind of crime, regardless of what effect it has. I hope it does have an effect.
Daniel?
I don't think that Britain recognising Palestine will have any effect, I'm afraid. I think it's a completely misguided policy. Britain has been doing some useful humanitarian work, and that, I think Keir Starmer deserves some credit for that. But recognising Palestine is, in the first place, rather meaningless because Starmer's plan there's nothing defined in it. You know, we don't know what the territory or the borders or the military status of this new state would be. But there's a deep contradiction in that he says that Hamas can play no part in the governance of this new state, but he has no means of preventing that happening because he wants Israel to stop what it's doing, which is to remove Hamas. So it's not going to work as a state. And even more importantly, it seems to me to be sending quite the wrong signal. It's rewarding Hamas for the appalling massacre of October the 7th, which is what started this war. Starmer's plan puts all the onus on Israel to do a whole series of things to end the war, while requiring nothing, really, of the Palestinians.
Aisha?
So I agree with what Polly has said, and sorry, Daniel, I completely disagree with what you've just said. I think it's important for Keir Starmer now to show the leadership and the platform, one of the manifestos, platforms that he was elected on last year, which was to recognise the state of Palestine. And I cannot believe that it's over a year now and we're still having this conversation, and every single day that we are just kind of wringing our hands and talking about this. Children are dying, families are dying, people are being bombed while they're queuing up for food. And I think it's atrocious, and I think it's about time we kind of put our money where our mouths are, and the promises that were made last year and all these intervening years as well, and recognise the state of Palestine.
How can you recognise a state when nobody has drawn the borders of that state?
Well, of course, this is something that we definitely need to sit down and talk about, but the two-state solution, the agreement that were already made, agreements, we have to start somewhere. And that is basically, we're literally looking at Gaza. The images that are coming out are horrific. Literally, it's been carpet bombed. There's nothing there. And still the idea for going in and consistently bombing people's remaining, the rubble that's already there, it's being bombed.
But isn't this just a massive case of virtue signalling? Because I come back to it. It is totally illogical to recognise a state, the borders of which no one has defined.
Well, it's about time we define the borders, and it's about time we give the Palestinian, the people, something that they've been promised. And again, we have to start somewhere, and we keep on talking about this, and like I just said, the more we talk about it, the more time that is being wasted. And again, I mean, today's announcement by Keir Starmer that Israel has until September to agree to a ceasefire, otherwise, I mean, we didn't agree to this when we voted for Labour, when I personally campaigned not only for the Labour Party last year, but I personally campaigned for Keir Starmer to become leader of the Labour Party. And this is something that we feel passionately about, and something that not just myself, but many, many other people. And if you actually look at all the independents that were elected last year, on this very topic of stopping the war, the ceasefire in Gaza, to stop all the humanitarian aid being blocked, to stop people being bombed, displaced people, by the way, bombed in their tents after they've been bombed out of their homes. Again, this is going to get worse for not only Starmer but for everybody else, unless we actually kind of agree to do what we agreed in the first place.
Ben.
Andy.
Sorry, Andy.
That's okay.
I know why I called you Ben, because
Yes.
I know a Ben Preston.
Oh, I see.
So it's in my head. I'm going to do it again.
I have
I'm
no
sure
connection to Ben.
I do apologise.
That's okay. Look, it is clearly something of an empty gesture, because and the statement itself was vague. The danger with it is, to me, is that Hamas would see it as a victory, and many of their supporters would, and that's a real risk. But the situation there is I'm not exaggerating when I say it is a humanitarian catastrophe, and what's depressing is it could actually even get worse. So I'm a believer in taking action and doing something, even if it can be criticised, even if some people think it's not doing very much. I believe that we should talk to Israel and say that we will do something positive. And I also believe that if we do that, there will be interest from other nations. We may inspire them to come forward, but we have to be really careful that we handle this sensitively and intelligently. We mustn't send a strong message that Hamas has won.
Let's have a follow-up question here from Chris in West Malling, who says, is it right that recognising Palestine as a state is being used as a bargaining chip for Israel to comply? Daniel?
Well, I think Israel is the country that is most affected by the question of whether there should be a Palestinian state. And so it's just not realistic for anyone to expect it to happen unless the Israelis agree. You know, you're asking them to create or participate in the creation, or at least acquiesce in the creation of a potentially hostile neighbour. They're not going to do that unless that they could be very, very sure that this Palestine will not immediately attack them in the way that Hamas did on October the 7th. And of course, it's happened many times in their history. So, I mean, one very important point is that this state would have to be demilitarized. I don't think Hamas are going to accept that, and probably not Mahmoud Abbas on the West Bank either. So, you know, there is a huge impasse.
And which, if you are going to be an independent state, you can understand,
of course,
why they
if it's a sovereign state, then it's up to them whether they have an army or not. The other key player in the region is America, of course. And what I think is sad about Keir Starmer following Macron on this is that he was only talking to Donald Trump a day or two ago. And why wasn't he using his leverage there? You see, now that he's committed himself to recognising Palestine, I think Trump will stop listening. Trump is going to veto this at the UN anyway. But if Starmer had kept his cards closer to his chest, I think he might have had some influence over Trump.
He must have talked to Trump about it, though.
He did. He did talk.
They did talk.
He did talk. And what's more, Trump said it didn't concern him, because I think in the past, if Britain had seemed rather cowardly in not saying this sooner, it was because for fear of revenge from Trump. But he's very erratic. You never know what his response will be. And this time his response would be, fine, do that, that's all right, it's not going to upset me.
Apparently Donald Trump is now denying that they discussed it.
Well, it doesn't seem so. But I think what's important about recognition is not about drawing borders or exactly what its constitution would be. The existence of Palestinians as a people is denied by large numbers of people on the right in Israel. They actually say there are no such people. So when you produce extraordinary ideas of turning the whole thing into a Trumpian Riviera and pushing everybody out into other countries that won't take them anyway, that's what this is about. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you use the G word or not, or just massacre and slaughter and eviction. The idea is that the people don't exist, and by saying they do, you at least recognise.
But Aisha, isn't the basic problem here that you have Israel, or an Israeli government rather, that doesn't want a two-state solution? I mean, Netanyahu has now been open about that, I mean, having caveated it before. And you've got well, Hamas certainly don't want a two-state solution. I mean, we can argue the toss about what Fatah want, but that seems to be very unclear as well. All I'm saying is that it doesn't bode well for this proposal really to get off the ground, does it?
Well, Iain, I'm going to actually come back to what Daniel said earlier. We're talking about this new Palestinian state as though Hamas is going to exist. I have been speaking to Palestinians who've actually escaped the war, and they're here. And they've said that there's no way they would ever have Hamas back. They would never vote for Hamas again. And actually, we see this all the time. You see
some of the pictures from Gaza at the moment, don't you, where people are actually chanting against Hamas.
Absolutely, and this has been happening for a while, Iain, but it just hasn't been reported in the mainstream press here. And obviously you've just mentioned the right-wing Israeli government as well, and I actually was in Israel 2 years ago and literally got off the plane, landed at Tel Aviv, amazing, and literally 2 hours after we'd gone to our hotel, there'd been all these skirmishes because there have been so many protests against Netanyahu and his government since, well, obviously 2023, early 2023. And even now, we're seeing images where Israelis themselves, 80% of people in Israel, do not want the war in Gaza to continue. They're sickened by the sight of children starving. They're sickened by the sight of all these refugees, displaced people sitting and just begging for food with empty pots. They want the war to end, and they know, the Israelis know the only way the war will end is if Netanyahu and his right-wing government is not in power. So we're talking about two types of government, the Hamas government and not in power anymore.
Can I just chip in? I think the question was, is this a bargaining chip? It's worse than that. I think it's a threat. Basically saying, if you don't do X, we will do Y. That's literally the definition of a threat. So it's a threat. I'm fine with that. And the reason I'm fine with that is because something has to change. I'm not taking sides on this. There are the most horrendous things going on, and everybody wants to see an end, but there is literally no end in sight. So we need to disrupt it. So I'm a big believer in doing something here. And for those who don't believe it, in our country, within the United Kingdom, the situation in Northern Ireland, which I know veterans of that conflict, and they say they would never have believed it was remotely possible to get two sides sharing power, to get two sides backing the same politicians. Extraordinary things have happened. Difficulties remain there, but extraordinary progress has been made.
It sounds as if you're advocating a one-state solution.
Well, what I'm advocating is disruption. What we've got isn't working, and there is no end in sight.
Right, thank you for your answers on that question. We have lots of questions to come. 0345 6060 973. It's 90 minutes past 8.
This is LBC. Leading Britain's conversation. Cross question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
It's 21 minutes past 8 on LBC. With us, Guardian columnist Polly Toynbee, Andy Preston, businessman, former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. How did you become an independent mayor of Middlesbrough?
Hard work, good campaigning, and just lots of personal energy.
But for an independent to do it, I mean, that takes something, because it's not you. I mean, we had Angus the monkey in nearby Hartlepool.
Yeah, Angus the monkey.
You're not a monkey.
Well, thank you. It was very difficult. I mean, there was an independent mayor before, but he was very close. Labour put him in power, basically. Right. It was about a Labour power struggle. It was extraordinarily difficult. It put Labour's nose out of joint in a horrendous way. And it was a tough gig, because I didn't have any natural allies.
Did you enjoy it?
It was a privilege, but I didn't enjoy it.
Which is why you're here. Not as mayor. We also have Aisha Ali-Khan, human rights campaigner and political commentator, and Daniel Johnson, editor of TheArticle. Now, for people who don't know about TheArticle, 30-second elevator pitch.
Wow. the article is the antidote to all that sort of siloing of opinions where people just hear an echo chamber of their own opinions. We have a very wide range of opinions. You've just heard me on Gaza. I publish lots of things that are the opposite, would be much closer to Polly or Aisha. So it's not, a monolithic thing at all. And another good thing, it's free. There's no paywall.
And one of your writers, I believe, is a certain Ali Mirage of this parish.
Indeed it is, yes.
There we are. So it must be a good website.
Yeah.
Right, let's take a text question, WhatsApp question from Daniel, who says, I heard Kemi Badenoch's pathetic answer to Iain on wanting to ban doctors from striking because of the resident doctors. The prison officers are often referred to as another group of workers who can't strike, but do you think that if prison officers were allowed to strike over pay and conditions, then the prisons would be in a better position and be safer for those prison officers for today? Andy, let's start with you.
Well, that's the issue with the doctors' pay rise, isn't it? If we cave into doctors again, who's next? Is it nurses, hospital porters, paramedics, prison officers? There are certain occupations that we have to look after, we have a duty to look after, but categorically must not, under the law, be able to strike. The challenge we've got, and the problem that this is so thorny, is that while it's true that the junior doctors have had a big pay rise, and a lot of their claims are false, it is also very true.
What's false about their claims?
Well, what they're doing is when they say that they are behind inflation, they pick and choose the dates and they use different inflationary measures. So they play with the numbers here to mislead people. But their main claim, or a central one, is actually very true, which is they could move abroad and earn more money. And that's a problem for all of us. So what's the solution? First of all, I think it should be made illegal for them to strike, but I believe that there should be an independent body that decides what the fair rate of pay is now, a truly independent body, and then and that should be linked to
there is an independent body,
a basket of other countries. Well, they're striking for more money. That we've got to take that out of the equation, and we have to link what they get paid with rates in other comparable countries, and remove the annual debate, remove them coming back next year. If the government gives in to this now, the nurses will be next, and why shouldn't they? And then the hospital porters, and then the prison officers. There is no doubt, Iain, that people will die because of the strike. There's no doubt about that, and it has to be stopped. But I do have some sympathy. If I could earn more money elsewhere, I would be saying, why aren't you paying me something like that, or at least halfway towards it?
Aisha.
So I actually know of 3 people who've left the medical profession, doctors who underwent all the rigorous training, they spent a couple of years working, and then they realised actually this profession doesn't respect us, it doesn't value our contribution, and we're actually putting our lives, every time we go into a hospital or a doctor or whatever, we actually put our lives into the hands of these people. We trust them, and we should recognise the contribution that they are making to saving our lives. And I think, Andy, I have to disagree with you there now. I feel that if we're a country that allows people to strike, that's one of the cornerstones of democracy, yet we are going to deny people like the doctors their right to strike. I think that's really unfair.
What about if the government said, look, we recognise that your contribution to the health service is absolutely vital. We can't allow you to strike, but we're going to give you X, Y or Z. We're going to promise to restore your pay in the next 2 years, or we're going to change your working conditions for the better. I mean, would that be a fair bargain?
Yes, I think it would. And Andy, again, I agree with something that you've just said, which is let's set up an independent body to recognise and bring the pay of doctors in line with everybody else that's being paid internationally as well, because doctors are leaving, and I don't blame them. I mean, teachers are leaving. I'm a teacher myself, and I know so many colleagues have subsequently left over the last 20-odd years of me being qualified. They've left the UK and they're working abroad, and they're actually having a decent work-life balance as well now.
I think that's actually key to this, the working conditions, not just the pay. But it was interesting on a cross question about a month or 2 ago. one of the guests firmly said, well, they're all going to New Zealand because they get paid 3 times more there. And I thought that cannot be true. So we looked it up during one of the breaks, and actually the doctor's pay in New Zealand is about the same as it is here. So there are quite a few myths going around on this subject. Daniel, let's come to you.
Well, my grandfather was a doctor, a great doctor, actually. He was one of Churchill's doctors. He was a pioneer he was the person who persuaded people that fibre should be an important part of diet. He was a gastroenterologist. He was one of the people who built the NHS. I think he would be appalled if he were alive today and saw the resident doctors manning picket lines and making life and death decisions about who should be allowed to cross picket lines. It's just not what the medical profession should be about. So I totally agree with Kemi Badenoch that the right to strike should not be allowed. It should be part of the doctor's contract. And they should know that before they even start their training, that they are not going to be striking. However, there are, of course, deals to be done. I mean, doctors have fantastic pensions, far beyond the wildest dreams of anybody in the private sector. And some of that money could be given up front. You know, if the state put slightly less money into people's pension, into doctors' pensions, and paid them more earlier on in their careers, that might be a good deal. And, you know, in fact, I think Wes Streeting was talking to the doctors about doing something about their tuition fees, which, you know, they've all run up large debts.
And then they walked out.
And then they walked out, exactly. They wouldn't even talk about that. That seemed to me a very fair deal. After all, you know, my 4 kids have all got massive student debts. They're not being offered remission of student debts. I think I would grab that deal if I were a doctor. But seriously, you know, it's just immoral to deny medical attention to people who need it. And it's part of what being a professional is, that you don't strike. And, you know, there are many compensations for being a professional, but you should not be striking.
Polly?
I find it quite ominous that Kemi Badenoch should say they should be banned from striking. You know, doctors are essential. Civilization depends on them. But stop and think about how many other people we depend on. We discovered that in COVID. All the people who stayed in work because we absolutely needed them for civilization to survive, whether they're water workers, electricity workers, care workers in care homes. I mean, once you start stopping people striking because they're essential, you don't have many people left. We possibly only, you know, a few of us sitting around this table who may be less than essential.
Oh, Polly, please.
But I think that's I think she hasn't thought this through, and I would put that's putting it kindly. But as for the doctors, no, I think they're making a very bad mistake, and I think they won't win this strike. I don't think they should. The moment Labour came in, the first thing Wes Streeting did was to offer them immediately 22%, which was a walloping great increase. True, they'd
Do you think he regrets that?
Behind. Well, I think he's quite angry with them and quite upset and quite personally offended, because he said, you know, Labour's here we are, we are for the public sector, we're for public sector workers, we are the party of the NHS. And then this is what trade unionists call a slap in the face, which I think is quite shocking. And as a result, very little public support. There was a lot of public support last time. There isn't any longer now, and it's falling quite fast. And I think they should back down. What's on the table for them are things that actually matter much more to these doctors. They keep talking about the year one foundation doctors who are paid the least, an average of about 45,000. Within, by the time they first qualify as a consultant, they're going to be earning 105,000, and they compare themselves with baristas. And you say, "What? Go to any barista and ask them if they'd like your terms and conditions." But what matters to them much more is that there is this disastrous planning. Training planning that has left 20,000 of them without jobs to go into, because the last few years the government just failed to say, if you're training this many doctors, you need that many consultant posts at the end.
Well, no, it's worse than that, because what Boris Johnson did was allowed almost an unlimited number of doctors from overseas to come in. And so they're competing with British doctors now.
Yeah.
And we had a call last night. I think the same lady rang Tom Swarbrick earlier explaining her daughter's situation. And in 3 weeks' time, apparently, there's going to be thousands of doctors out of work, even though we need the doctors.
And yet he's already said to them, I could fix this. I will create these trading posts. We're going to need more consultants anyway. And he thought he had a deal. And when they walked out, and their committee, obviously more militant than the two leaders, rejected it, he was pretty shocked.
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting few weeks following this. Lots more questions to come. 0345 6060 973. But let's get the LBC News headlines at 8:32 with Daryl Jackson.
The Conservative leaders told LBC this is not the time to be recognising statehood after the Prime Minister said the UK will recognise the state of Palestine if Israel doesn't improve the situation in Gaza. Kemi Badenoch said there should be a two-state solution, but not with Hamas in charge. A 3-minute silence has been held in Southport to mark a year since 3 schoolgirls were stabbed to death at a dance class. B.B. King, Elsie Stancombe and Alice da Silva Aguirre were murdered last July. And thousands of people have joined the Lionesses in celebrating their historic Euros title win. The England team took part in an open-top bus tour down the Mall before a ceremony outside Buckingham Palace. LBC weather, a few isolated showers tonight, clearer in the southwest, a low of 9 degrees.
This is LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:34 on LBC. Polly Toynbee is here from The Guardian. Former Middlesbrough Independent Mayor, Andy Preston. Aisha Ali-Khan, human rights campaigner and political commentator, and Daniel Johnson, editor of TheArticle website. Now, here's a text question from Andrew in Fulham. Was the Trump press conference, you all knew there was going to be a question on Donald Trump, didn't you? Was the Trump press conference in Aberdeen a PR triumph for Sir Keir Starmer, demonstrating his close relationship with Trump? Or was it a PR embarrassment, given Trump appeared to disagree with so many Labour policies? While during his visit to Scotland, Trump objected to the building of offshore wind farms near his golf courses, and also said that Britain's taxes on North Sea oil are too high, and also again criticised Sir Sadiq Khan's record as London mayor. Nasty, he called him, I think. Aisha, let's come to you first.
So, we all saw the footage, and honestly, I was disappointed in Keir Starmer just kind of standing there, wringing his hands, looking a little bit worried, almost like an elderly aunt waiting to intervene and kind of slap stop being so naughty. You can't say that, And I just thought, this is you are the Prime Minister of this country. Donald Trump is the visitor. You should be receiving him. And earlier on today, I heard somebody say it was like King Donald had arrived and everybody had turned up to pay homage and, show allegiance and so on. And I thought, gosh, that is such a good analogy, because that's what it looked like.
But it was Donald Trump on home territory, because it was his golf course, wasn't it? I suppose that was the dynamic there.
And yes, absolutely. This trip had been planned. He was going to, cut the ribbon on another golf course. I don't know how many golf courses he needs, but anyway.
I think everyone should have 2.
Okay. I think I'm lacking then. But again, this trip to Scotland for Donald Trump, at least, was supposed to be something in a sort of private capacity, and suddenly he's receiving leaders across Europe, Scottish leaders, the Keir Starmer and so on. So he's combined business with pleasure almost, but it still meant that Keir Starmer was left looking like, just kind of out of place, really, which is such a shame, really.
I think the fascinating thing here is to imagine a rich British Prime Minister using a British government aeroplane to go and visit his golf courses in America. There would be a public outcry, Polly, about the abuse of taxpayers' money, wouldn't there?
Absolutely. There would be a public outcry about just about everything that Donald Trump says and does. You can't imagine him, I think, as an English Prime Minister. But we have had Boris Johnson, we have had Liz Truss, we've had our own extraordinary, unlikely Prime Ministers. But I think what we see in that spectacle, which is the same with all of Trump's meetings with heads of state, is the extent to which he is the great global playground bully, and everybody has to kowtow. And he has said, I'll hit you with 50% tariffs if you don't please me. And it may be a bit embarrassing that we've done so much better than others and just got 10%, but he plainly, in some odd way, gets on well with Keir Starmer. It has paid off. So you could say, well, it's humiliating, but it's humiliating to him, but he takes one for the team. He takes one for the country, and we've done rather better as a result of this kowtowing. So should we complain, or do we say that's what a good leader does?
Thank God for Brexit, Polly?
Well, it's very interesting to see the gloating that's going on. Telegraph is full of it. Even Kwasi Kwarteng writing gloating pieces about the amount that we get from this is minuscule compared to what we've lost through Brexit. I mean,
but Jonathan Reynolds, interestingly, the business secretary, I mean, he absolutely is up front saying this could not have happened without Brexit.
He had to when asked, didn't he? Because it was true. But also, he is
I'm glad you admit it.
He is the business secretary, yes, but it's minuscule compared to what we've lost. He is the business secretary hoping for inward investment. He can't really go about saying Brexit is terrible and we're all paralysed by it, because it won't help his task, but it doesn't make it true.
You just watch all that inward investment flow now coming up from other European countries. We're going to be rolling in it, Polly.
When? We've had nothing but loss so far.
Well, we might disagree on that. Daniel?
Well, the thing is, I yield to no one in my dislike of Donald Trump. I denounced him long before he became president, and I've been doing so ever since. But when he's sat there next to Keir Starmer saying, what you need to do is low taxes, do something about crime, do something about immigration, cheap energy, you had to admit he was right on every single point. And the truth is, I think Keir Starmer knows he's right. Now that he's Prime Minister, he's beginning to realise that unless you do those things, your economy goes down the pan. And that's rather humiliating in a way for him, very embarrassing. On the other hand, as we've all agreed, he has managed to get the 10% tariff instead of poor Ursula von der Leyen's 15%, which the French and everyone else in Europe are furious about.
Yeah, they are. They're blaming her personally, which I think is slightly unfair. Slightly unfair,
because, the fact is, they blink first. And America had the whip hand on that. But I mean, as to the more crucial things like Ukraine, I don't trust what Trump said at all. I think this new deadline for Putin, we'll see it come and go. I doubt very much whether it'll make much difference. And I still don't trust Trump on that. But I do think Keir Starmer is making a bit of a difference. He's pushing him gently in the right direction on Ukraine. And for that, I think he deserves some credit.
Can I just say, I'm not sure about this at all. And first of all, I'm going to stand up and say that Trump and Starmer do not get on at all. Trump is...
Well, how can you say that?
Well, because they don't. Basically, Trump is a bully. And of course, bullies love someone who acquiesces and fawns and rolls out the red carpet and gets them a ride in a beautiful gold carriage. That's what this is about. Trump has zero respect for Starmer. But of course, the financial bully and the political bully that he is, he will absolutely tell you that you've won a brilliant deal. Of course he will. He wants you to feel good about the fact he's ripping you off, because he will come back for more. And I have to correct people here who think that we've got a much better deal than Europe. That is far from obvious. That's far from obvious. The deals are not written down. They're not legally binding. At the moment, they are just broad ideas, and Trump can change his mind tomorrow. And secondly, where we've got a lower tariff rate on cars, that's only for a certain number. Above that, the tariff rate goes way above Europe's. It isn't clear at all when you look at this, the scant detail that there is, that we've got a decent deal. Trump's a bully, he's an economic thug, and what we've got is we've got a bunch of nations that collectively are bigger and stronger than the bully, but the leaders will not join together and stand up. And it's embarrassing, it's humiliating. And somebody said a couple of weeks ago that rolling out the red carpet for Donald Trump would have Churchill turning in his grave. And I really believe that.
Well, hang on a second. If you know your history, you think about how Winston Churchill prostrated himself in front of FDR to get FDR to go into the war. I mean, he actually I think he stayed in the White House for 6 weeks, and every morning would try and argue his case.
Ian, I think there's no comparison with FDR and Donald Trump, is there?
Well, I just tried to make one, but admittedly, as I was saying, I thought this is ridiculous.
Joe, our pal and ally, Uncle Joe.
I think Stalin had weapons and a really strong military. Trump does, but collectively, the rest of the world, or the rest of the free world, is as strong as the USA economically in almost any other way. And it is embarrassing, and it's a shame, and it's shameful that one by one they are capitulating. We have on our side potentially Canada, Australia, Japan, the EU, the non-EU countries, and other nations who would be a much bigger trading bloc.
So we should all get together and stand up to Trump. Yes, that's what you're saying.
Bullies always back down.
Well, he hasn't, has he? And he doesn't show any sign of
we haven't stood up
doing
to him.
it. Well, so you're basically taking the line that Ed Davey takes, that Keir Starmer should not have kowtowed to him at all. Whereas I think it's actually in the country's interest that he has.
I think there's a role for diplomacy, isn't there? There's always a role for getting on with people and making concessions and compromises. That's a natural way to live your life, personally, professionally, and otherwise, politically, certainly. But what we've done is fawned. Sorry.
Yeah, but can I say, I mean, I just want to bring it back to the strategic aspect, because, you know, trade is one aspect, but we do need the United States in Europe. We still do need NATO. Yeah. And there was a real danger, and I think still is a real danger. There are lots of people in the administration who would love to wind up NATO and pull out of Europe completely. They think China is the big threat to America, not Russia, and they don't care about Europe. And I think that's why Starmer has taken the line he has, because, you know, he understands that there are bigger things than just economics.
Right, well, it's coming up to 8:45, so let's take a short break before we go on to some more questions to our panel.
This is LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:47, Polly Toynbee, Andy Preston, Aisha Ali-Khan and Daniel Johnson here with me taking your questions. Bradley in Salford says, is it in any way fair to say that those of us who want the right to view websites full of perfectly legal content, brackets porn, without the government censoring it, are on the side of paedophiles? Now, Nigel Farage is demanding an apology from the Tech Secretary Peter Kyle after he claimed that those, like Reform UK, who want to see the Online Safety Act abolished are on the side of predators, with Kyle arguing that someone like Jimmy Savile would now groom his victims online. Andy, let's start with you.
The Online Safety Act is there in the main to protect kids, to remove the risk that they see pornography, suicide material and other things to do with self-harming and all the nasty stuff that they're exposed to and destroys lives and families. And so it's fantastic that the Conservatives got something going and then Labour have taken it on and it's actually now being rolled out. So that's absolutely fantastic to see. What Nigel Farage has done is turned it into something that it isn't. It isn't about destroying democracy. And of course, even if there is a tiny impingement in some aspects of voicing your own opinion, even if that happens, let's get this done, let's protect kids and let's try and finesse it later. This country is riddled with people that try to block every bill that they can because it's not perfect. And that's why we get almost nothing done. We've got to start accepting that very good is good enough and we can change it later on to try and make it perfect if we want. I think the comment from the Labour man, I can't remember his name.
Peter Kyle.
Bringing Jimmy Savile into it and trying to label Nigel Farage with that was stupid, it was ignorant, and it detracted from the real issue. It's turned it into a circus. It was a really stupid thing to do. But similarly, I think that Nigel Farage is being stupid over this. He doesn't have a solution for the problems that he identifies. In my opinion, he has no plan what to do. He's just trying to criticise and throw stones. It's a positive step in the right direction and we should applaud it.
Polly?
Yep, I agree with all of that. I think I think the worry is that it's not going to be tough enough. I know very little about the ways around tech things, but it already appears that using VPNs, kids can get themselves a verification very quickly within a few clicks.
And they're the most downloaded app now.
The legislation just has to go faster than kids who are very tech savvy and will get their hands on this stuff. So every way that we can, we should use, even if it does impinge on a bit of freedom around the edges. The idea that children now are viewing at a very young age, most of them viewing absolutely disgusting and terrifying stuff, but may damage them for life. It seems to me a small price to pay, minor restrictions on some people's freedom.
Daniel?
Well, agreement seems to be breaking out around this table.
We'll move on to the next question.
No. I mean, but I just wanted to say one thing, which is, I think this gives you a little glimpse of what Britain would be like if Nigel Farage were Prime Minister. He does shoot from the hip. He doesn't really think things through. And he tells people what he thinks they want to hear. And what he thinks people want to hear at the moment is no restrictions at all. We're the land of free speech and all that. Well, we are. But we have always protected children, and my goodness, we need to do that even more nowadays. So I think he's just wrong about this, and it's just typical of the way in which reform is a sort of free-for-all for prejudices and ill-thought-out opinions. And I think people, before they vote for it, really ought to look much more carefully at what they're buying.
What's interesting, Daniel, is how often he's wrong. He calls himself a populist, but he keeps going for things that are plainly not popular. I think most of the population want to protect children more than they're going to worry about sort of fringe freedoms around the edge. He's very often not got his finger on the pulse, which will be maybe why he never is Prime Minister.
Ivor says it's now easier to get into the country than it is to get onto Pornhub. Aisha?
So, 15 years ago, I spent a couple of years campaigning around internet safety, especially for young people. As a teacher, I worked at safeguarding as well on top of that. And I recognised with the launch of the iPhone in 2007, the access that we were all going to have literally to anything that we wanted to watch online, and that would obviously apply to our children as well. Now, this is something new for me, because normally what I have seen is that the tech companies are way, way, way ahead, and the law is struggling to catch up. But now, today, last few days, it's the opposite. The law has been established, and actually, where have these tech companies been? Because this act was passed in 2023. The consultation started in 2020, so this is not something that's come out of nowhere. But I do feel that you've mentioned Pornhub and watching pornography. What is required now, and obviously X as well, we have to do this, is age verification. So you have to give your details, you have to give your age and so on, and then you're allowed to continue whichever site you want to.
But most of these sites aren't doing that. Okay, it's early days, but they were required to do it from last Friday, and they're not doing it.
But they've been notified for years. I mean, this is not something that's, like I said, just happened out of the blue.
I can see it might be more challenging to get foreign sites to do it. But there are British porn websites that you can access now, because I've tried, all in the interest of research, obviously, and none of them have it.
Well, this is, where have they been? And Polly, you've mentioned about young people being affected, damaged actually with what is available online. And we're not just talking about porn. It is like a funny thing to talk about, but we're talking about suicide sites, we're talking about terrorism, we're talking about access to self-harm and so on. And these all horrible things play out in schools across the country, and teachers like myself, we witness this firsthand. And we think, this act has been in the making for such a long time. There's no way it's going to get repealed. I hope it's not repealed, and I think the government announced it as well, that there would be no repealing of the act. And for Nigel Farage to say something like, well, I don't have a plan really to replace this, but I'm working with the most advanced tech minds, etc., etc. The tech minds that he's probably referring to are the ones behind Pornhub in the first place. I'm sorry. This is something that we've fought for years, safety of our children.
I think the argument that the tech companies, that they say, we can't do this. You look at YouTube. YouTube does not have porn on it. So therefore, and it's a massive, massive organisation.
Yes.
So you think, well, if YouTube can do it, why can't these other companies? Anyway, we've got time for one more question before our fun question. It's from Paul in Bolton. How can we make men's football become as family-friendly, as inclusive of different genders, races and the LGBTQIA community, and a place where players can come out about their sexuality like the women's football arena is? It's a place where the likes of Lucy Bronze and Kira Walsh can live their lives more freely. Aisha, let's start with you.
Well, for us to understand how men's football is perceived, we've got to understand how toxic masculinity is perceived, what it's like to be a strong man, a brave man. And I have a good friend, David Hagan. He was one of the first openly gay managing directors of Leeds United, and he's done so much to help pave the way for other footballers to come out as well. But I do feel that we actually hold our footballers, male footballers, to a different standard than the women footballers. I think if we have to continue this conversation, we have to make it easy for them, and also to say that we accept no matter how you are, who you are, what you want to, how you want to live your life. There's no problem there, and we have to reinforce that message continuously.
Andy,
I think that men's football is very family-friendly. Look at the Premier League. It is astonishingly family-friendly, where people of all ages, genders and views congregate, and it showcases Britain across the whole world. So I think that's a misnomer and an unfair statement. However, there is an issue, which is that there are obviously lots of gay Premier League and Championship footballers who just, for whatever reason, are not coming out. And that probably doesn't do much good. It probably does a little bit of harm. So I think it's a very good idea to try and change that culture. But to understand it, it comes from history. Men's football evolved as the main sport of the nation and the main sport of boys decades and even centuries ago, whereas women's football became a bigger thing far more recently when society was much more tolerant, and that explains the difference. So I think your caller is probably asking for too much too soon. I think it is inclusive, but I'd love to see more gay footballers that are doubtless out there coming out.
It'll only take one. I mean, there have been gay footballers come out, but not in the Premier League. And about 7 or 8 years ago, I used to write a column for Attitude magazine, and I wrote a 1,000-word fictional account of what would happen if an England footballer came out. I haven't got time to go into it now, but it's on my website, iaindale.com, if you want to find it. But suffice to say, it wasn't the stereotypical thing that people think, well, football fans... it's agents that are the problem, because they persuade the players that if they come out, all of their commercial contracts will go.
Yeah.
Absolute
Nonsense.
Rubbish.
Yeah.
It would be exactly
Nobody
the
cares.
opposite.
That's the great thing.
Daniel?
Well, it's obviously true, isn't it? Nobody cares anymore. And, I mean, my daughter worked as a filmmaker for Manchester United, and, you know, she found that sort of toxic masculinity very unpleasant. You know, she loved everything else about the club, the fans especially. You know, they were wonderful, very tolerant, very open, lovely people. The footballers were these sort of, you know,
macho men.
Well, pretending to be at least. But anyway, I
with all their cosmetics.
No, you're right. It's a bit like film stars. I mean, do you remember how it was in Hollywood when you couldn't come out there? Yeah. But that's all changed, and I'm sure it will change in the Premier League too.
I'm not sure it has changed in Hollywood, actually. I think there's still a lot of that kind of sentiment still there.
Okay.
Holly?
I think women's football is an astonishing phenomenon. I didn't ever really think it would take off. Maybe it only has because they turn out to be so brilliant. But I think they will change the atmosphere.
Apart from taking penalties, but...
Brilliant. All around.
Well, they actually win
around,
things.
No, they have won things, but I mean, to introduce a slightly discordant note, they didn't deserve to win that tournament, did they? And they didn't actually play that well.
It's knockout. You win. You know, it's what happens, and a lot of it maybe is luck. And there they are, and we should be very proud of them. But I do think they changed the atmosphere around football. It's true. Huge numbers of women and young girls are there in the audience. My granddaughters go to women's football and love it, and they like the feeling of it being very much a women's thing. I think, and I think that will shine a light on the nastier aspects of men's football and make them behave better.
Right, let's move to our fun question, which is sort of slightly allied to this. Mike in Pinner. Lionesses manager Serena Wigman danced with the Nigerian singer Burna Boy. Or is it Burna Boy? I don't know. On the stage outside Buckingham Palace this afternoon as the squad celebrated their Euros win. But which performer would you most like to get up on stage with? Polly?
Well, being my age, I'm not going to choose someone immensely young and fit. So I'm going to choose someone I hugely love and admire. So Ian McKellen will do for me.
OK. Daniel?
Well, he's not strictly a performer, but he's a great playwright and a dear friend. And I would just love to have an exchange with Tom Stoppard.
A dance.
Oh, it's a dance. Oh, I'm not sure Tom would be up for that. He could join in
conversation.
Sorry, I thought we just had to go up on stage.
No, that's fine.
Anyway.
Well, I'm going to be up on stage at the Edinburgh Fringe, which, Polly, you did that with me a couple of years ago, didn't you? I've got Michael Heseltine, Rachel Reeves. What could possibly go wrong? Andy?
I am a terrible dancer. I would love to be a great dancer. So for me to get up on stage, I'd need lessons first. So I would choose any of the women who are on Strictly. I don't know any of their names, but any of them to...
all of them.
On stage or all of them. Give me lessons for a couple of weeks and I'll get up on stage with one of them and perform.
Well, I'm allocating you Wayne Sleep. Aisha?
I'm going to go with Jennifer Lopez because she has been making all these incels online. Their blood's been boiling. They're literally foaming at the mouth because a 56-year-old is dancing in skimpy outfits. I'm just going to stand, by the way. She's going to do all the moves. And I'm just going to ask her to wear the skimpiest thong outfit that was going to make all these men who are angry that a 56-year-old is dancing and shaking her booty. That's going to be my choice.
We should all be up there with her, strutting out funky stuff. Oh yeah. Thank you all very much indeed for coming on the panel this evening. On tomorrow's panel, it's the final cross question of the summer. We'll be back in September, but tomorrow's panel has former Conservative MP Jonathan Gullis, political economist Will Hutton, the Sunday Telegraph columnist Zoe Strimple, and LBC's very own Natasha Devon. Coming up in the next hour, we are going to talk about why people ever want to emigrate from this fine country. I don't understand it, because the grass is not always greener on the other side, as many people find, and then they return because they haven't gone to the country of their dreams. This is particularly the case with younger people at the moment because apparently Britain faces a vote of no confidence from its youth. The latest polling indicates that over a quarter of 18 to 30-year-olds are either actively planning or have seriously considered emigrating. Why? Why would you want to leave this country? Yes, it's got its problems. All countries have problems. So why would you even think about leaving? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the Conservative leaders told LBC that now is not the time to recognise a Palestinian state after the Prime Minister said the UK could do so as soon as September. Sir Keir Starmer says the UK will do unless Israel takes substantive steps to end the suffering